A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. John F. Kennedy, the 35th US President, has once said that the only reason you give a speech is to change the world. And associating that very quote to our session today, we have amazing speakers ready to pour their hearts out as we embark on a journey of changing our lives through Toastmasters. Torrington Toastmasters Club warmly welcomes you to a spectacular evening with some of the most distinguished personalities in the country who'd share their experiences on Toastmasters for life. Taking a few minutes before we dive into the essence of today's session, let me invite the project chair of Toastmasters for Life, Toastmaster Ashin Wadasinghe, Club Growth Team member of Division D, District 82, to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Helene. And I warmly welcome everyone who is here today with us, because this is an initiative that we took up to make sure that you understand what you are going to get by becoming a Toastmaster, not just for your personal life, but when you go out there to the corporate life, what do you get being a Toastmaster? So that was our prime intention, and we have gathered an astounding panel of speakers who will share their points of views when it comes to public speaking and the corporate life. So I warmly welcome everyone, and back to you, Helene.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Ashin. And with that, let me take the honor of inviting our very own Area Director of Area 1, Division D, District 82, Toastmaster Shireen Fernando, to address the audience.
Thank you, Melanie. Life is too short. Now, this is a very well-known quote by everyone. But now recently, I found out another two quotes. It says, the world is too big to stay in one place, and life is too short just to do one thing only. Dear friends, I'm sure that we have achieved many things in our life when we look back. But in this changing world, there are new challenges that we come across. The public speaking skills is one thing that would help us to overcome these challenges. So I warmly invite you to sit back, relax, and listen attentively to all the veteran speakers that we are going to listen to today, and enjoy the session. Back to you, Helene.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Shireen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to begin with the certainly remarkable sessions of our speakers. Let me state that the audience can post their questions on the chat box, which will be answered after each session, and also on a general Q&A session at the end of all speeches. Without further ado, let me now do the honors of inviting our first speaker today, Mr. Bradley Emerson. Mr. Bradley is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Imperial Institute of Higher Education, who is renowned for his coaching skills as executive coach for National Development Bank, a coach for war veterans from battlefield to boardroom, and many other establishments. Having been awarded with the Achievers Award at the Postgraduate Institute of Management Professional Association, Mr. Bradley is here with us to speak on what is public speaking in the corporate life. Mr. Bradley, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, Mr. Bradley, you are.
So thanks a lot. So the topic that was given to me is to talk about what is public speaking in corporate life. But I thought I'll switch gears and ask you this question, or implore upon you. Just close your eyes for a couple of seconds and imagine a world without speech. What does it look like?
Disappointingly quiet.
Disappointingly quiet. And strangely, in English, whenever we we hear about somebody's death, we hear an obituary notice, we say rest in peace. But is that what we want in workplace? So I worked in about 5 organizations, and in every organization, I have found people who come in so meekly and leave so meekly. They exist so meekly. They come in, nobody notice. They are there, nobody notice. They leave, nobody notice. Nobody notice whether you come, whether you're present, or whether you leave. Nobody notices neither your presence nor your absence. Now, how do you make that happen? Why is it important for you to get noticed? Forget about work. But as a human being, we are gifted to be one. We could have been anything and we could have been anywhere. And here we are. Before we go down here, what is that we need to do as a human being? Now, few people who have inspired me when we speak of speakers, the latest being President Barack Obama. There's a book written to say like Obama, which I bought. The way he speaks made him president. That's it. What made Obama the president? The way he speaks. And I'm sure you all know the rest of them. There are many. I just picked a few. Che Guevara, amazing young man who through his voice created a movement. Adolf Hitler, who's not here, was a bullied child in school, shy kid. But watch him speak when he wanted to conquer the world. I had the privilege of listening to Lalit Yatratmadali in some convocation as a chief guest in some events when I was in the JCs. When he was Minister of Trade, I've seen him speak at a press conference. Amazing articulation. These are people who have touched the hearts of people across the world. And Lee Kuan Yew, my most admired national leader, had that skill even when he was in his late period, in his 80s. He could still speak forcefully and move things. And Martin Luther King Jr. on top. His speech called I Have a Dream is still a benchmark speech. He was killed on 4th of April, 1968. That's over 50 years ago. And still Americans talk about I have a dream. It is his speech that got the blacks the right to vote. His speech moved constitutional change. And these are people who inspired me. A few of them. There are so many people we come across in life every day. Work, society, streets, that a few things they say, not necessarily a speech, a sentence, sometimes a word that will touch you. So this man, Charlie Chaplin, is known as a famous actor who never spoke, like Mr. Bean. But when we spoke in 1940, the world stood still.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us.
Now, imagine a world without speech. There'll be no religion. If the religious leaders didn't speak to the hearts of the people, there'll be no country if there was no speech. It'll be no direction. There'll be no innovation. There'll be no progress if there is no speech. Everyone who found something new had to convince somebody the worth of their finding. So, what makes it so important to be able to speak? I put it within quotes. All of us can speak. That's what we say when you pick up the phone. We speak. But what is the difference of speaking against speaking? Talking and speaking are two different things. What makes it important for a human being for able to speak to somebody, particularly in the corporate world? No matter where you are, what do you do, it's about relationships. Therefore, it's about conversations, powerful conversations. It can be a one-way, it can be a two-way, for some multi-way conversations. And every one of them has the skill of speaking. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a manager, an employee, every professional have to master the skill to create an impact. I'm not saying speak, I'm saying master the specific skills to create an impact. A business analyst will know the numbers. A marketer will know how to target his audience. But how do you create an impact? In every interaction. Speaking is supposed to be, the fear of speaking is supposed to be greater than the fear of death. So people rather prefer to be in the coffin than having to make the funeral oration. Why? Because you feel the jitter in your gut. But you also find the strength in the gut. All what you need to do is to push it out to see that you can. You ask any good speaker, they would say that they had the same fear. I may share a few of my personal experiences in my journey to where I am today. So please bear with me. The first time I spoke, I was invited to speak in public, was to the Association of Personal Secretaries, called SLAPS. Now, I prepared my presentation. I was invited by my colleague, a secretary at Commercial Bank at that time. I was invited for this session, so I went there. I prepared. It was at Holiday Inn at that time. So I walked into the hall and I walked out of the hall immediately. I opened the door, shut the door, and came out. You know why? There were more than 200 women in that auditorium. And I just walked up and my knees, trust me guys, was shivering. There was no way of going back. I went into the cloak and I was telling myself, Mr. Bradley Emerson, you got to do this. So I came back. You know, when you are one man among 200 women, the oohs and the ahs and the shoes and, you know, all kind of noises. For the first 3 minutes, I was talking to the ceiling. I couldn't make eye contact. And gradually I brought my eyes down and made eye contact. And then the presentation went. Got to find that gut in you. It's not something that we can't. So we speak because we want to make an impact. For whom? That's a question we will ask towards the end of this presentation. So for you to make an impact by speaking to somebody in any conversation, to touch another soul, you got to be convinced before you convince somebody else. You cannot create an impact if you're not convinced about something that you want to talk about. So in your corporate world, if you want to impact the people around you, first thing is you got to be convinced of what you're talking. So that homework that needs to get done. So I'm going to share with you 6 questions about career. Now, when I was around your age, I joined the JCs because I wanted to develop my speaking skills. I used to be on stage in school. I've done drama, I've spoken, I've been in choirs, I've done that. But I wanted to get that public speaking. So our induction program was addressed by then National President Upali Mahanama. Yes, Roshan Mahanama's father. And the way he spoke, is still a good speaker. The way he spoke, completely mesmerized. And I was thinking to me, as I had just started work at Commercial Bank at that time, I was thinking to me, if Upali can talk to the audience of about 600 people, why can't I? If Upali can raise hair in my skin, bring in goosebumps, why can't I? So this is where it started, of how he impacted somebody, and then how I realized that's who just vomit, just throw things out. But communication or speaking or creating an impact is the art of articulation. That's what you learn in Toastmasters. Progress, they say, is growth. But how will you create that opportunity? How will you create that opportunity? Opportunities need to be created by conversations. Interviews are that, isn't it? Leadership is about followership. How do you create followers and how do you retain them? Look at the organizations like the Buddhist doctrine, like the Catholic Church, which were formed thousands of years ago. The followership these leaders created has survived thousands of years. What did they have? They didn't have PowerPoints to present. They spoke impactfully. They understood the audience. They picked the right method to communicate. You as managers will need to activate your team. Motivation is a thing of the past. Motivation comes from the word motive, the intent. Activation comes from the word action. How do you activate your team? How do you get the teams to deliver? How did Osama bin Laden get people to rob an aircraft and crash into the... What they did was wrong. But what made Osama bin Laden get people to do that is speaking skills. Talk to the heart. People want to just go out and jump out of the window for him. Impact. Your net worth will be your network. How do you create it? How do you retain it? How do you grow it? How do you go into an audience? When you go into a cocktail, do you look for someone you know and go and plug in with them? That's what we normally do, isn't it? You go into a room. What do? You look for someone you know and go and plug in. Even if they are in a crowd, you go and plug in. Why can't you talk to the very first person who's in front of you, introduce yourself and strike a conversation with? Doesn't happen, isn't it? Then how do you create a network? If you don't create a network, how do you grow? Career progress comes through interviews. How do you make that in 15 minutes? Let me share some of my experiences. When I went for an interview to Panisha Bank, that bank didn't even mention the name of the bank because at that time the bank was really down. I'm talking 2003. I went for the interview. At the board was Dhammika Pereira, who was the deputy chairman. And the slides I had, one slide I had studied their balance sheet. And I had one slide, it said, this bank is beyond strategy. It needs surgery. Right. Then during the interview, the then CEO, late Mr. Nataraja, was telling me, we have 14 MBAs in our senior management. And I said to him, I don't see that in the balance sheet. Now, these are not prepared. These come instinctively and instantly because your mind is trained to pick those opportunities. It's like picking the half volley on the leg side and hammering it away. So the impact that you create in careers is about your confidence. I have interviewed hundreds of thousands of young people for jobs. And when they come and sit in front of you, often I have said, sit back, relax, take a deep breath. Because every conversation you have in careers, be it an interview, be it a presentation, be it a meeting with a manager, is about how you say it. So that's what speaking in the corporate world means. For you to speak, you need to be confident about what you are going to say. Most of the time, people are shy to speak because of content, because they're not confident with their content. So there's a big difference. They're both making noise, and you know what will make you shiver. That's what happens in corporate world. People will stop to listen. When you listen to Zeba song, when it says, everybody listens when I start to sing. But can everybody be spellbound when you start to speak? Because it is speech that moves the world. It is speech that creates revolution. It is speech that creates both harmony and disharmony. It is speech that can touch another human being. So speech, public speaking, is a gift that keeps giving. So have confidence that every human being is different from animals because he can speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradley, for those valuable thoughts and insights you've shared with us on public speaking. And with that, we open the floor for any questions from the audience directed to Mr. Bradley. You can drop your questions on the chat box, which will then be directed and read out to the audience.
Bradley, I have a question. You said that we have only 15 minutes to promote ourselves. How do we make maximum use of that 15 minutes?
Interesting. Number one, you got to prepare where you're going, right? Number two, make sure you interview the interviewers. Often we go very meekly and then try to answer questions, but go prepared for interviews. I'll tell you one experience I had when I was interviewed by Charles Tilly to join CIMA. I asked him when we sat down, so I said, okay, fine, how are things? And my question to him, so what is the CIMA story? I was being interviewed to be regional director. So I asked the CEO, so what is your CIMA story? And his response was, I'm looking for someone who can write the story. And then I said, here are a few stories I have written in my previous workplaces. That's how you strike the interview. So to make an impact, number one, in an interview, the first two seconds is your grooming. First 2 seconds is your grooming. The next 2 seconds is how you pose yourself on the chair. 4 seconds. The third 2 seconds is the first question you ask. Like I asked, so what's your story? You start the conversation and then you make an impact. So make sure you interview them and not that they interview you. Got that? 6 seconds. You'll be hired. Did I get through to you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Bradley, we also have a few exciting questions on the chat box.
Yeah, on a wedding, we were seated during a long day and unknown people now start a conversation. It's very interesting. Exactly. Now, you see, your network matters. I mean, I never forget to carry my card. I learned it from Japanese. I saw a Japanese who had a plastic business card in his swimming trunk. Right. So when they have a conversation, even in the pool, he would give them a card. It was made of plastic. So in a wedding, when you are seated along with so many unknown people, how do you start a conversation? Hello. So how are you connected to the bride or groom? Very simple. Right. So where do you work? What do you do for a living? There you go. The conversation is why. Why do you have a conversation? Because you want to expand your network. How can you help him? How can he help you? Very simple. How are you connected to the bride or groom? Are you connected to the bride or the groom? Groom, all right, it's nice. So how are you connected? I'm curious. I'm connected to the bride because the bride and my daughter are classmates, things like that. So you open yourself up to him without asking questions, then he will feel free to share. So techniques to tip hostile audience in a corporate setting. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to very interesting. I was invited by then Education Minister. I had never been in a hostile situation like that in my entire life. That was S.P. Disanayake. He invited me to address the university lecturers and faculties and deans and the top brass of the universities. We were trying to introduce CIMA to the universities for our graduates to get more professional skills. So I made a presentation. I remember I showed the slide to them. I said by 2030 we will be about 1 million people will be retiring and 1 million people will become 18. So it's 1:1 representation, and Sri Lanka will be pushed to extend the lifetime or work lifetime. It's happened now. I said this about 10 years ago. That's happened. They extended the lifetime. And this entire conversation went, and then they got so offended that I was kind of undermining the local degree program. And Dr. Susit, we are very good friends now. He got up, he spoke very good English. He got up and he said, this gentleman, he's promoting an international qualification, is not patriot, and he's undermining this august audience, and we are producing so many graduates and all that. So I asked him, what are you proud of? What are you proud of? Your growth of unemployed graduate is faster than the economic growth of this country. This is going on at Colombo University, and S.P. Disanayake was seated. What are you proud of? And then I said, you say I'm not patriot. I have traveled the region. I have found the quality of university graduates I have addressed, and I feel sad that our graduates are not up to the mark. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And eventually SB has to get in between, and he said something in Sinhala. He said, "Ape rate me amatyanshe daruwekage uparima kale api aragena eyatat wadak nathi රටටත් වැඩක් නැති සමාජයටත් වැඩක් නැති කාලකන්ණි කරන අමාත්‍යාංශය තමයි මගේ අමාත්‍යාංශය. මේ මිනිස්සයාට මමයි එන්න කිව්වේ. We were trying to bring, so that was very hostile. So the answer to you, convinced before convincing. When you have that in your head, you know exactly why you are there. If there is hostility, be happy you're making a point. Right. How can I start a conversation? Alien environment, first time abroad. Right. My experience when I first went to CIMA head office in UK, in the senior management, I was the only Asian to sit around with all the British. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of who you are. Don't feel subordinated to anybody anywhere in the world. That is why we don't speak. Inside, you feel small. Forget it. You're equal human being. You're probably more educated. Probably you're more skilled. Take that with you. It's you who go. The environment doesn't matter. It's you. So don't change you because the environment changes. Be who you are. Converse from a point of strength. Environment has nothing to do with who you are. Did I answer your question?
I believe we have answered all the questions on the chat box. Okay, we have one more question. I think we can take this on to the question and answer session at the end of all the speeches.
Right.
Yes.
Guys, let me tell you one thing that when you go for interviews, companies don't want to know what you know. Companies want to know what you can do. What I look for in an interview is your energy. Bring out your attitude in every answer. Don't try to say, I have this qualification or that. It is nothing. Even Google has stopped looking at qualifications. They hire people for energy and attitude. If you look at IIH advertisements, we don't ask for qualification. We first say we are looking for energetic people with can-do attitude. You can be qualified if you don't have those two. No company wants you. Trust me. So go in and say what you can do. Right. Cultural different. Excellent. See, this is why you got to do your homework. Right. I've spoken in Bangladesh, I've spoken in Nepal, I've spoken in Pakistan. Right. One of my most powerful entry to the audience in Pakistan is I listened to their national anthem and I picked up a few lines and they all stand and sing about the national anthem. They keep the hand on their chest and they sing the national anthem. And there is one line is called Jane Istakbal, means my life is my nation. So I asked them, so is Jane Istakbal is something that you mean? Now they look at the Sri Lankan coming and talking about what of your national anthem touches your heart. I asked this when I talk to Sri Lankans using the national anthem, which line touches your heart? That you can ask yourself. So you sang the national anthem and I said, to me, Jane Istakbal touched my heart. You say this, you got your ground sorted. So that is how you break in to an international audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bradley, for those insightful answers and tips and techniques on how we can speak in unknown environments and hostile environments, and also most importantly, reminding us that we should be who we are. So once again, thanking you. We reach the end of our first session for Toastmasters for Life, and we move in to the second session for the day.